The next question that we move on to is about what we currently have in our unitary development plan. So that's the series of policies that we have at the moment that we use to determine planning applications, and in part the city management plan will replace a lot of the detailed policies within that. At the moment, the unitary development plan identifies 3 levels of view, and these are strategic views, local views of metropolitan importance, and local views. And we wanted some discussion about the relative weight and the relative importance of those different views and how they can be assessed and reflected in policy, and perhaps some differences in criteria to which we might apply to how we assess developments within those views, or what those views really mean in policy terms. But I think before we open the floor to this discussion, if Rob Ayton could please explain perhaps some of the differences between those 3 views.
Yes, in the UDP, we refer to strategic views, which were the long-distance views of the Palace of Westminster and St Paul's that were introduced, I think, in the early 90s. And then we refer to metropolitan views, which we regard as views of Westminster that important views that tourists and residents and people in central London recognise as being symbolic of London, the sort of view you might see on a postcard, for example. And then the third tier, we have local views, which are important to the local area, but not necessarily that widely known. The problem that we've had recently with our 3 level of views is that the GLA have objected, or under Ken Livingstone, objected to our use of the term metropolitan views, because they said if they were metropolitan views of strategic importance, then they were for the GLA to define rather than Westminster. So we've relabelled them local views of metropolitan importance, so to try and get around that problem. But under the current setup, strategic views will not only include those long-distance views of St Paul's and Palace of Westminster, they will also include all the 26 views referred to by the Mayor in the London View Management Framework. Some of those views are exactly the same as our own metropolitan views, but we've identified a whole series of what we think are local views of metropolitan importance which are not covered by the Mayor. I mean, there is an issue about the number of views protected under the London Plan and the London View Management Framework, because although there's been a change in Mayor and the new Mayor has slightly different views from the previous Mayor on view protection, the actual 26 views hasn't changed, and that can only change when the London Plan is reviewed. So that will be some time in the future. But at the moment, we're just looking at a revised London View Management Framework, which is based on the original 26 views.
Does anyone have any comments to make on the sort of relative criteria, or on the views that we have and the structure that we have in the existing unitary development plan, and whether or not it's appropriate to carry that through, or whether you'd want to see some changes to the policy framework in place?
Thanks. Barnaby Collins. Rob Ayton referred to postcard views of Westminster. I'd like to add that many postcards these days include views of the Millennium Wheel, views of the Gherkin. I wonder whether policy should be developed to allow views of new buildings, and maybe even to create new views to allow new buildings to be seen, because Westminster, London, is not just about looking back on the past, it's also looking forward to new buildings that will be the heritage of the future.
Okay, thank you.
Like Jones Angasell, just sort of about the local views, really. I live and work in London because I want to see buildings and not pretend I live in the countryside.
This is a bit problematic, really. We are bound by, shall I call it, the Ken Livingstone London Plan, and it may be another 3 years before the current mayor gets his revisions as the new London Plan. But we have a pretty good idea what Boris Johnson wishes to see with the major strategic views of London, and that is to actually go back to a widening framework for those views. Would Westminster, to what extent could Westminster, being aware and perhaps assuming that the Boris Johnson views are going to become the plan, would it be probably wouldn't be politically acceptable to say, but the opinion is going to change, and it will be a revised London plan, and use that to influence future proposed tall buildings and buildings which, under the Ken Livingstone plan, would actually encroach in what would be then the Boris Johnson's plan?
I think I could probably answer that technically from the point of view of policy development. Not only will the London plan take some time to develop, but equally our city management plan will take some time to develop. And clearly, as Boris develops his ideas and publishes documents in relation to what he wants to change with respect to the views, and we can follow on. And it's always open to us to make a case, regardless of whether or not something is in the London plan. It's open to us, and particularly if there's quite clear indications that the London plan is going to change in a particular direction. It's open for us. If a lot of people within our community express a particular view, there's a locally distinctive element for it, then we can certainly put the case forward at the time when it comes to be independently examined. So I wouldn't see that as the fact that the London plan hasn't changed yet. It does not completely knock on the head any ideas we may have about moving forward as well.
It's not for me to make any comment at this stage because I'm here to listen. It'd be unfair for me to impose my views at this stage in the process.
I think certainly what we're looking for is ideas from the community about what our policy approach should be, and then if we support those and if we feel there's a lot of merit in that, then it would be for us to go forward and make the case to examination in public.
Hugh Bullock. I think that as with conservation areas and as with listed buildings, we spend a lot of time analysing what is the special interest of a listed building or especially of a conservation area. I think one of the difficulties we have with the views at the moment is that there isn't enough clear analysis as to what it is about views that is important, and therefore the judgment as to how a view is affected sometimes is made in a vacuum. So I think for this exercise to be really productive, there needs to be more analysis behind any one view that can be properly debated between all those involved. I think merely to designate a view in itself doesn't really take you forward, and in fact the City Council has on many occasions already been quite satisfied that the fact you can see a building in a particular view is still a good result and has been happy to permit them. So I think it's how you arrive at those balanced arguments, having the evidence behind a view will probably make some of this analysis more, easier to undertake in practice. The detail point on the your draft SPD, where I think you have got into difficulty, particularly, is seeking to apply it outside the boundaries of the city, when simply as a matter of law you're not able to do that. So that's a passing comment, but I just mentioned that.